will be able to be on the play this game. And looks like both players are ready to go. Resolve mulligans, I believe.
Does she have 5 cards?
Not sure if Shaheen took a mulligan here. Looks like he might have gone down to 5.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate if it's the truth. Yeah, it looks like he's down to 5. So not sure if Gerry had the mulligan as well, but Shaheen down to 5 cards on the play. Does have a Jace the Mind Sculptor, which can help you recover from anything. So see if he gets there. But
in a spot like game 1, when Gerry has so much hand disruption in the hymns, the Thoughtseize, and then still has his Force of Wills in. Force of Will, again, a card that not great typically these blue mirrors like I mentioned, is good when you're already ahead on cards, because you can afford to sacrifice those 2-for-1s.
Yeah, so Gerry does have a Thoughtseize, which could attack Shaheen's hand even more, along with a Brainstorm, Force of Will. Abrupt Decay as a potential answer, Stoneforge Mystic to slow down the Batterskull from coming into play. What do you think Shaheen takes here? Probably Thoughtseize or Brainstorm?
I think he has to take Thoughtseize. He needs to set up a situation where Gerry's forced to use that Force of Will to try to regain some of the cards he's down. And the only way he can do that is by taking that Thoughtseize.
And it looks like those are the 2 cards he's debating right now.
Yeah, I mean, Brainstorm is the only other blue card. It does let Gerry kind of make up for the fact that his hand has a couple more lands in it than he wants. But I think it has to be Thoughtseize here.
Yeah, especially because he has a Brainstorm in his hand. After getting off a mulligan to 5, maybe he wants a little more manipulation, sort of set up his next few draw steps. But no, it looks like he takes the Brainstorm.
So he's willing to sacrifice that Jace in his hand to stop Gerry's ability to kind of turn some of those dead cards he's drawn into more live action. So, for instance, Gerry may have wanted to Brainstorm away a land in that Force of Will, shuffle them into his deck, and get some more proactive early game cards. Won't have that opportunity to do that now.
And I think that's a reasonable line from Shaheen, because Gerry doesn't have a lot of action in his hand. Very reactive, kind of a reactive hand. Brainstorm's probably the most proactive card in Gerry's hand. So I think Shaheen's probably just thinking, okay, well, if I can just slow down Gerry a little bit, maybe I can draw my way back into this match.
I do think it's a reasonable line for Shaheen to take. I mean, what we would see is Gerry could Brainstorm and shuffle away, like I mentioned, that Abrupt Decay, for instance, that has no targets.
Yeah.
That's like drawing an extra card.
Yep.
So if you view that Brainstorm as almost more of like an Ancestral Recall, shuffling away 2 dead cards, drawing 3 potentially live ones, makes some sense to take it in this spot.
Yeah, so Shaheen's more than fine with getting Thoughtseize right here. Wants to just sort of try to slow Gerry down a little bit, which taking your Brainstorm definitely does. Now Gerry's debating whether or not to take the Brainstorm or the Jace the Mind Sculptor, and decides to take the Jace the Mind Sculptor, knowing just how important it is in this matchup.
I like that choice. When you have very few cards in hand, Brainstorm is not very exciting. You don't have anything bad to put back to shuffle away. It becomes much more like a Sift than an Ancestral Recall.
And it looks like the Brainstorm revealed a Lingering Souls, a Thoughtseize, and a Stoneforge Mystic.
Those are some good cards. Unfortunately for Shaheen, he actually has to shuffle away 2 of them if he wants to get mana this turn. So that may dissuade him from taking the Thoughtseize, because he doesn't want to have to fetch. He wants to probably to draw the Stoneforge, the Lingering Souls, and the land.
Yeah. He could choose to just ship the Thoughtseize and cast the Stoneforge next turn, knowing that he'll lose it. Or maybe he just doesn't care about the Lingering Souls.
I think Lingering Souls is one of the most important cards in this matchup. I would be surprised to see him send it away here. And having just seen Gerry's hand, I guess maybe the presence of that Abrupt Decay might be influencing him here.
So if he wants to keep the Stoneforge, he probably wants the Thoughtseize too.
And you do see him kind of moving those 2 together as he's moving these cards around. Really taking his time, thinking this decision through.
It's a very tough decision. Does he lose a card? Does he just play it a little slower and just wait 2 turns before cracking? Definitely a tough decision. Looks like... Oof.
Okay, so he's decided to keep the Thoughtseize Stoneforge combo. So he's basically all in on this now.
Okay, yeah.
If this gets disrupted, if his Batterskull doesn't hit play and deal 20, I think he's going to have a very hard time pulling out a win now.
And the unfortunate thing for Shaheen here is he's going to cast Thoughtseize. He can take the Abrupt Decay, but Gerry still has a Force of Will. So if Gerry draws a blue card, Stoneforge, and like you said, he's all in on Stoneforge. So.
Exactly. This is one of the reasons why I thought the other line was better. Because now he just has to fade a blue card here on this turn, and then fade an Abrupt Decay or removal spells for the next 4 turns.
Yeah, Lingering Soul's very good against the hand of Force of Will and Abrupt Decay. So.
Yes. I liked that line. I thought it was a little more
But the gamble paid off for Shaheen so far. Gerry didn't draw a blue card, so Stoneforge Mystic will resolve, getting a Batter Skull, and Shaheen drew a Polluted Delta for the turn.
Right, so now we need to fade Thought Seizes, 2 of those, 3 Hymn to Tourachs. You know, we need to fade 3 Abrupt Decays, and all the Jaces. So that's 11 cards here that Gerry can draw that instantly.
Even a Shardless Agent sort of adds a little excitement to the game party.
Yeah, it's more than half the things that Shardless Agent can flip will deal with this Batter Skull. So if you add those 4 more, so they call those like 3/4 outs. That's like 14 cards now Shaheen has to fade over 2 draw steps. That's sort of why I thought this line was not as good as the other.
So there's the him.
And he fails to fade them.
So Gerry will be able to play a land this turn, cast him to tourach, and he could also activate the Deathrite Shaman.
I mean, Shaheen can practically concede at this point. He's not going to, obviously, but he's just so far down on cards, and he doesn't have quite enough lands. That said, you know, Gerry doesn't have a lot of action here either.
Yeah, Gerry doesn't have a lot of action.
Shaheen has time.
He has a Force of Will, which he can't activate. If Shaheen draws a 4th land, all his Jaces are suddenly live. So, again, he also has 1 Jitte in his deck. So if he top decks a Jitte, it's actually not that bad either. So, this is one of those situations where if Shaheen had Academy Runes, it'd be great. Now, I know you, Zvi had Academy Runes in his list. I'm not sure if you had any input there, but how do you feel about Academy Runes in Esper Stoneblade?
I think it's a great card. It took me a while to come, and there we see, my previous statement about Shaheen, maybe should concede, was a little premature. Now looking a little bit more spot on as we now see this an actual threat.
He actually has a threat.
And that clearly is very important for this being relevant. Also, we see Gerry proactively Deathrite Shamaning to avoid Snapcaster Mage, letting Shaheen try to claw back into the game. Back to your question, though, about Academy Runes. I did not have it in my lists for a long time, thought it was very unnecessary, until I actually played with it for a couple dailies, and it was outstanding. It really overperformed my expectations. I think it's a very important card in this list, especially once you start adding in Engineered Explosives.
Yeah, and all the mirror matches we've been seeing, it seems like one of those cards that would be really incredible sometimes, just because about how important Batter Skull is.
Absolutely, and you have room in your list, and so here we see again Shaheen holding off on the Lingering Souls to try to set up Supreme Verdict. Unfortunately, Gerry draws this Thoughtseize to disrupt that plan, and now once he chumps, Gerry knows for.
Oh wow! So it looks like Gerry wants to hold up 5 mana for Force of Will.
I'm actually surprised, given that chump, that Gerry would do that. But here we see Shaheen bricks on that land. May need to cast Lingering Souls just to not take too much damage. No, he's going to go ahead and try to Brainstorm. Okay.
Again, from Gerry's point of view, maybe he's thinking that I just want to make sure I can counter a Jace the Mind Sculptor, because that's the only way Shaheen can really get back into this game potentially.
Yep.
There's only 1 Supreme Verdict in Shaheen's deck, so I don't think it's unreasonable there. But I do agree with you. Shaheen chump blocking there does sort of send a strange signal. Like, why would you just go throw away your Stoneforge Mystic? He still has Jitte in his deck,
right?
So it does kind of send a signal that maybe a Wrath is coming.
Here we have an awkward spot again now where Shaheen didn't fetch first. Normally, which is you would never fetch before you Brainstorm. But now he wants to play this Lingering Souls, and he wants to hide that Supreme Verdict on top of his deck so it can't get Thoughtseized. He can't do that.
Yeah. And again, I don't think this is a misplay from Shaheen. It's just an awkward situation because generally you don't crack your fetches prior to a Brainstorm.
What we end up seeing, I think, is he's going to play a Stoneforge Mystic and not search.
Not search for the Jitte.
Well, he doesn't want to search because he put that Supreme Verdict on top.
But the thing is, I don't think he needs to do anything this turn. Gerry's not threatening lethal next turn. Obviously, he's going to be taking a huge hit this turn, but I think he can afford to just sort of pass for the turn. Especially because...
Oh, not anymore.
Okay, well, here comes Creeping Tar Pit. That was Gerry's draw. Very good draw here. It's going to allow Gerry to still have a threat in play after Supreme Verdict. Are we going to see a Thoughtseize here, though?
We are?
We are going to see the Thoughtseize now. So it doesn't matter. Supreme Verdict's hiding on top of his deck. Shaheen tempts Gerry with Lingering Souls.
So specifically because Shaheen's hand was Supreme Verdict, Lingering Souls. He was digging for a land, and he knew he wanted to hide the verdict. This is, I think, one of the extremely rare cases where if he thought it through, he would have fetched before he cast the Brainstorm. Because he wants to get a land wants to get 3 mana in play to cast that Lingering Souls, to trade and buy life points, and he wants to hide the verdict.
Well, I agree with you. Not only do you sort of trade and buy yourself some life points, but you also kind of put yourself in a position where maybe Gerry will overcommit a little bit more, making your Supreme Verdict that much better.
Yeah, so I think he very unusual situation where you actually are correct to fetch before you brainstorm. It's very hard to see that that kind of a line though when you're in the game because it's so ingrained that you brainstorm and then you fetch.
And again, Shaheen was on a mulligan to 5 on the play, facing a deck with cards like Thoughtseize and Hymn to Tourach in it. So maybe he felt he needed to try to go for a more aggressive line, which began with that Stoneforge play, which you kind of disagreed with a little bit. So down a game, but he'll get to play the second game. And what do you think is going to be coming in for Shaheen after board?
So Shaheen's going to bring in, likely bring in the Perish. It's just a cheaper sweeper that will kill off Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf and Charlotte's Agent. It kills off all, but it is counterable. So maybe there's some drawback there. I think he'll certainly bring in the Inquisition of Kozilek. He will likely bring in the, and probably also bring in that other Supreme Verdict. But the real question is, how does he want to change his main deck? Does he want to leave in Force of Wills, and if so, how many? That's the critical question. If he wants to leave in a lot of Force of Wills, not much room to really change with the sideboard. Those are the only cards that are obvious cuts.
Yeah, and how much do you like Force of Will in this matchup? Because we've been seeing Gerry Thompson board out Force of Will sometimes in this matchup. He doesn't value it that much. Do you think Shaheen, because Gerry doesn't value it, do you think he also doesn't feel that necessary?
It's very different, the two sides. Like I mentioned as we were preparing to get cut to this game here, I think that we should, because remember that Gerry has these Ancestral Visions and Hymn to Tourachs that gain card advantage. You can then sacrifice card advantage to fight that. Whereas for Gerry, looking at Shaheen's deck, Shaheen has no similar threats that are to put him ahead on cards. So for him, Force of Will is just strictly card disadvantage. So I think given the relative kind of angles the two decks are playing, Force of Wills make sense in Shaheen's deck. They do not make nearly as much sense in Gerry's. Gerry's going to board out those Force of Wills for more one-for-one answers. Cards like
Maelstrom Pulse.
Maelstrom Pulse, thank you. Cards like Maelstrom Pulse and Thoughtseize.
So from Gerry's side, he has those 3 Force of Wills. We've been seeing him board out a lot. You could expect maybe 2 copies of Thoughtseize, 1 copy of Maelstrom Pulse, maybe another copy of Hymn to Tourach he wants to bring in.
Sure, and possibly even some Nihil Spellbombs. I think almost certainly some Nihil Spellbombs.
Yeah, it's good against Lingering Souls, kind of shuts down Shaheen's Snapcaster Mages.
Exactly. What
about a card like Sower Temptation? Would you consider boarding that in just to sort of add an additional threat, randomly steal a Snapcaster if you need to, take a Lingering Souls token?
No, none of the things you steal are high enough impact. So if you watched people at home, if you saw Gerry's semifinal match against BBD, he boarded very differently there. He boarded in those Sowers because he could steal Dark Confidant and could steal Deathrite Shaman. He also boarded in Nihil Spellbomb there, where it's even better here. So I suspect he will bring those in this matchup. There were Deathrite Shamans on the other side, but I think it's more important to shut down the flashback on those Lingering Souls and to turn off those Snapcaster Mages.
How much do you like Abrupt Decay in this matchup, really?
I think you can shave numbers there.
Yeah.
I mean, it really only is stopping the Stoneforge Mystic on turn 2, which is important to have some ability to do that.
But with cards like Thoughtseize and you're bringing in 2 more copies of Thoughtseize, maybe you don't need all 4 copies of Abrupt Decay, because especially in that game, it didn't look like it was that incredible for him. There was a situation where if Shaheen just went for the Lingering Souls plan, the Abrupt Decay would have been terrible.
Right, so I think you definitely can cut that down. And you are also bringing in a Maelstrom Pulse, which gives you a different removal spell, a more versatile removal spell. Better versus Lingering Souls, better versus Jace, obviously, as it does something, and you can also kill Batterskull or force him to bounce it. So I suspect Gerry will take out between 1 to 2, maybe even 3 Abrupt Decays. And the Baleful Strikes I think also are going to come out.
Yeah, so it looks like maybe Force of Will, Baleful Strikes, and Abrupt Decays are probably the weakest cards in this matchup out of Gerry's deck. So probably shave some numbers there to bring in cards like Nihil Spellbound, Thoughtseize, maybe the 4th copy of the Hymn to Tourach, and a Maelstrom Pulse.
And maybe even Liliana the Veil.
Yeah, maybe.
Liliana could be better than a couple marginal copies of Abrupt Decay.
So interesting to see what Gerry does, but for now, while the players are shuffling, we're going to do a trivia question for you, again, for a year of premium. We've been doing this all weekend, giving out free premium to all our Twitter followers. So the trivia question for you people at home today is, we're going to hold 4 invitationals this year. One of them obviously is this weekend in Atlanta. We talked about Las Vegas. That was the other trivia question. There's also going to be one, I believe, in June. So if you can name the invitational that is not. So there's one in Vegas.
Yep.
There's one in Atlanta, obviously.
Yep.
And there's one in Somerset, New Jersey.
Yes.
So where is the 4th invitational going to be held this year?
It's also in Q4.
It's
so
in Q4.
The way to play the game, you go ahead and tweet your answer. You're going to tweet it to SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. SCG Premium is the hashtag. Go ahead, fire that name off. It's more important to be accurate than to be fast. This is not a speed contest.
It's not a speed. We were going to pick a Twitter follower at random, so don't worry about it. Just tweet the answer to us. It was which is the 4th invitational that will be held in Q4. It was announced as part of the Q4 announcement earlier this weekend. Yep. Again, not Las Vegas, not Somerset, not Atlanta. What is the name of that 4th invitational spot? So tweet us at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium, and we will pick one of you lucky Twitter followers after this round. So 2 players both still shuffling up here. Looks like they're ready to go.
Well, actually, no, it looks like we have a deck check going on.
Uh-oh,
deck check.
Mid-round? Oh, brother. I hope they sideboarded correctly. Hope nobody has 62 cards in their deck.
So this is something you don't often see in these sort of elimination rounds, but you got to keep them honest.
Yeah, you got to keep them honest. Now, do you think, the more I think about it, the more I'm wondering how many copies of Abrupt Decay Gerry really wants in his deck after board. I think maybe 2 is fine.
Yep.
I don't think you really want more than 2, though.
I agree with you there. It plays a similar role to Swords to Plowshares in the Esper Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And there you typically leave in 2 just to keep them honest. Here it's even a little bit worse. It costs 2 mana, not 1. And you have other answers to Stoneforge Mystic. You're not that afraid of it because you have these hymns and because you have answers to interact with Batterskull if it hits play.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see, even going down to 1 potentially in this matchup.
How excited are you that there's an Esper Stoneblade deck in the finals of the Invitation?
I kind of expected it.
All weekend you've been touting the strength of this deck. Apparently it has no bad matchups, and I guess I can't argue with you. I thought the Elf deck was actually favored last round.
Yeah,
and Andrew Cuneo, one of your teammates, agreed with me.
I think Andrew Cuneo is deluding himself in that spot, but I'd be happy to hop on Magic Online anytime. We can test it out.
I feel like we should see Andrew Cuneo playing Elves versus Tom Martell playing your signature Stoneblade deck.
We can make this happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that happen. See what really is the good matchup, because I think there's a lot of debate online as to what actually is supposed to win in that matchup.
Yep.
Obviously, Shaheen won handily 3 games after board, but Ross did win the first game.
Sure.
And, maybe got a little unlucky, maybe made a slight misplay in some of the following games. So, you never know. I still feel like the Elf player is probably a little bit advantaged there.
I'd be happy to...
and best out of 3, not best out of 5, best out of 3.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Game 1, I think it's close to 50-50 with a tiny edge for Esper.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sideboarded games, I think Esper's a huge favorite.
Okay.
So we can definitely put this to the test. And we can find out.
Yeah.
And we will maybe
look forward to Tom Martell and Andrew Cuneo streaming this challenge at some point in the future.
It might be enough to get me back to the back to streaming. Unfortunately, I've had my work has forced a break on me recently.
A lot of people streaming these days. Do you follow streaming a lot?
I do. And I mean, I was kind of one of the early streamers. I've tailed off a little bit since then, but I love it. It's a great way to interact directly with the fans, get a lot of great kind of dialogue going about Magic. I really enjoy it both from the perspective of streaming myself and also watching other people stream. So, and tune in on Twitter. I will make this happen. We will find out once and for all, maybe a best of 5 matches, 2 out of 3 game matches. What is truly favored, Esper Stoneblade or Elves? You can follow me on Twitter at Tom Martell. I will broadcast it widely, and let's resolve this question.
I feel like the loser of this challenge should be forced to write an article about Legacy and about the deck that they lost to.
I think that's fair.
I would love to see Andrew Cuneo write an article for Star City Games about Esper Stone.
Why don't you step up and play the Elf side yourself? you seem to be touting it, and you are here. Don't volunteer someone not here on the internet in the shoes that you yourself could fill right now.
I don't own an Elf deck.
I would be happy to let you lend it. I have the cards. I will lend them to you.
All right, I'll step up.
Okay,
there we go. The outside.
There we go. Challenge extended. Challenge accepted. And we will come to exact terms on what kind of list we'll use.
Oh, brother. Am I going to have to write an article now? Oh, brother.
You may write
an article. There's a lot on the line here.
I haven't even written an article yet about Esper Stoneblade. You might write one before I do.
The last time I wrote an article, George Bush was still president. So it's
George Bush won?
George Bush 1, yeah. Not George W. So both players got deck checks all good. No players, both players sideboarded correctly. So they're still shuffling up, waiting to resolve mulligans afterwards, and then we'll be well into game 2.
Gerry did not sneak any Dread of Knights out of his trade binder into his deck here, hoping no one would happen to notice. They weren't on his deck list.
What kind of, like, obviously Gerry doesn't have a card like Extirpate in his sideboard. What are some good answers? Again, and it's funny that Gerry is actually playing against Shaheen, because this is, Gerry was touting how he didn't think Lingering Souls was very good in Legacy.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys had a little debate on Twitter about it. And now Gerry, he's up a game, and Lingering Souls, it's possible that he might beat a Lingering Souls deck in the final of the invitation.
It's certainly possible.
So
I mean, I wish that I could sub in here with Shaheen and we could have this one out too on camera. Although I think Shaheen's certainly very skilled with this deck. There are certainly cards that are good against Esper out of a bug deck. And I think you mentioned one, Surgical Extraction, certainly good. Dread of Night, very good. Although talking to Gerry about it, he thinks, and I agree with him, that cards like Dread of Night or Engineered Plague are just too situational, and you'll draw them sometimes and not have the Lingering Souls be relevant. That's why he's moved to these Maelstrom Pulses, which are good in those games, but they also pick up things like killing Jace and killing Batterskulls.
Yeah, if you look at Gerry's sideboard, it's, it doesn't have a lot of 4-ofs, obviously, but it's a little more streamlined than some of the sideboards we've been seeing. If you compare it to like Shaheen's deck, there are a lot of 1-ofs in Shaheen's deck, whereas in Gerry's deck, it's like 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2. And the 2 1-ofs he has, they're just more redundant copies from cards that he has in his main deck.
Yep.
So it looks like Gerry put a lot of thought into what he wants to bring in and out for each matchup.
He's choosing to either choose, He's either choosing sideboard cards that overlap in multiple matchups, so he can play multiple copies of them, or he's just choosing to concentrate his sideboard on a few matchups and not have a lot for the others. Shaheen, on the other hand, has, 5 cards for every possible matchup, but maybe it's only 2 of the best one and then 3 that are worse.
Yeah, it looks like he's hedging a lot more than Gerry is. So Gerry, it looks like he has a nice Spellbomb in his hand, which he did board in. Starts out with a Suspended Ancestral Vision, which is pretty good in this matchup. But a Spell Pierce from Shaheen stops the Thoughtseize. Here's another Misty Rainforest for Gerry Thompson. Probably going to search for a Tropical Island.
I think
maybe suspend the second Ancestral Visions.
And these are the kind of games where I think Shaheen is in a big hole, because that's just a lot of cards Gerry's going to draw, and there's no good way to go after those.
Looks like Shaheen has a Vindicated Swords. He has a Jace. Looks like he might be a little land light, though.
I didn't see a 3rd land in his hand.
You did see that Perish that you were talking about coming in his main deck. So let's see what Shaheen's play. Is this going to be a Stoneforge Mystic? This is going to be a Thoughtseize. Gerry's hand, he's got an answer for one side of Lingering Souls, which is pretty good.
Yep. And Gerry's hand is very redundant, very immune to these sort of hand disruption spells. He's already put 6 cards on layaway.
Yeah.
You can't affect those anymore.
Yeah, going turn 1, turn 2, suspend Ancestral Visions is really huge in this control matchup. Shaheen doesn't really have a good answer to those cards. Gerry reveals the hands of Jace the Mind Sculptor, which obviously can't be targeted with Inquisition at Kozilek. And then the Nile Spellbomb, Tarmogoyf from Brainstorm. What do you think Shaheen really wants to go? What do you think he's most afraid of here? Probably not the Nile Spellbomb, because he doesn't have Lingering Souls in his hand.
I actually think it might be. He does have a Snapcaster Mage in his hand.
Okay.
So it could be Nile Spellbomb. He might want to get a flashback. But yeah, I think that Brainstorm makes the most sense here.
Yeah, with Gerry only on 2 lands, maybe he thinks he can slow him down a little bit. Does he forget? Okay, no. So he just alternated it. So
he'll knock one of them down 2 each time.
Yeah.
Which will achieve the same effect as moving both of them. So here we see, so Gerry sees that Shaheen misses his 3rd land drop, and Gerry just, fires up his 2 spells. Gerry's fine with this.
Yeah.
Gerry'd be thrilled that them both miss on land for 5 turns, because once those visions go off, he's going to draw lands, and Shaheen will be stuck on 2 cards.
Yeah,
or on 2 lands.
I think this is exactly the kind of start that Gerry wants. Shaheen does have a Stoneforge Mystic, which he just drew this turn, so I don't believe Gerry has an answer to Batterskull as of yet. But again, he'll be drawing 6 cards over the course of the next few turns, so not the worst situation. There's a Wasteland, which is a huge draw from Gerry. He's going to be able to deal with... Oh, actually, that's right, he has a Jace the Mind Sculptor in his hand. So he can bounce the Stoneforge Mystic, so Stoneforge won't be able to bring in, and
Shaheen doesn't concede. Yeah. So
Gerry was just too far ahead that game.
yeah, there's no coming back from that spot there, and that is one reason why Gerry certainly could be favored this matchup, because those games where he has certainly multiple, but even one in Central Vision on turn 1 and 2, so hard for Shaheen to come back from that, even if he has lands and spells. Here, obviously, he did not.
And a card that we haven't really talked about, but you know, Gerry does have 2 copies of Wasteland, which we saw one there. We talked about this all weekend. One of the things that Esper's Blade kind of struggles with sometimes is Wasteland. You know, mana denial is one of the ways that you can really attack this deck. And again, Shaheen kind of like stalled on land there, so it really didn't matter.
Right.
But we've seen it before where a timely Wasteland can really put a wrench in the Esper Stoneblade player's plans.
It can. I mean, Shaheen there was especially mana denied on, you know, only having this 2 lands. Normally he can take lines where he gets to fetch basics and can play around Wastelands. I find they certainly can be a little annoying, but they're rarely kind of backbreaking if you just kind of play around. They do pile on though. They put games where you're stumbling out of reach.
Yeah, and that's the thing where if you're stumbling and you don't really, even if you don't have a brainstorm, I think a lot of times, because the deck doesn't play that many lands, so if you have hands where, you know, they're good keeps but you don't have a brainstorm, like let's say you have like a Snapcaster, Stoneforge, maybe like a Forest Lingering Souls and just lands, you know, a Wasteland could put because you're still a 3-color deck.
Sure.
So a Wasteland could be an issue for you at times, whereas Shaheen doesn't even play any Wasteland, so Gerry just doesn't have to worry about that card. It's just something you don't have to worry about.
Yep.
Which I think that's one of the things that I like about Legacy is that the decks that play Wasteland, they just have this threat that it's just a land, you know? And some decks just fold to multiple Wasteland draw just because if you stumble out of the gates, Wasteland really punishes you.
Sure. And at the same time, though, I mean, Gerry is also playing a 3-color deck.
Yeah.
And now he has to make room for these colorless lands that aren't, you know, super relevant in all matchups. I like to make my mana either more consistent or, you know, find some more powerful uses for my colorless slots. You do see some Esper lists that play Wasteland, for instance, and I think that's just it's just not on plan.
You don't like the colorless lands that much. I mean, I know you were a proponent for like 1 Academy runes,
yes,
but you don't like multiple copies of the colorless.
I think you have
runes
1 slot for them.
1 slot?
And I think Wasteland does next to nothing. So in Indianapolis, when we kind of first played this deck, we played a Tower of the Magistrate, actually. That one did not stick around much after that tournament, but it was there to give their creatures protection from artifacts to knock off their equipment.
Okay.
Now I think you can do better. For instance, I actually like the Glacial Fortress that Shaheen has here. I switched to that for the next Legacy tournament after Indy because it lets you get around Choke.
Okay.
I feel like Choke is kind of gone now from the format. You no longer really need the Glacial Fortress. You can now turn that slot back into a proactive colorless land like Academy runs.
Okay. And I know that, you know, Gerry only has 2 copies of Wasteland. There are some bug versions that have more Wastelands, and they actually run a card like Life from the Loam in their sideboard in order to try to get a, so to speak, Wasteland lock on their opponent.
Typically, though, those are also playing more aggressive sets of creatures. Because if your whole goal is I'm going to make you stumble on mana, I want to kill you while you're stumbled. I don't want to give the game going long. Gerry's planning for a long game. So he's using those Wastelands almost more defensively or more tactically, whereas if you're playing 4 of them, you want to be a core part of your plan. Maybe you're playing cards like Delver of Secrets, maybe you're playing cards like Tombstalker.
Yep.
To really kind of push those games through.
And speaking of Wasteland, it looks like Gerry does have a Wasteland in his opener, so we'll see how effective it is for him this game. Shaheen starts out with a Flooded Strand searching out an Underground Sea.
So need to look at Shaheen's hands here and see, and Gerry's presenting his hand.
So it looks like he may have announced it Inquisition or Thoughtseize already.
If he announced it, would have been face up, but
there it is.
And Shaheen again, only 1 more land too. So, yep, there we go. So this is the start Shaheen wants. Gerry has kind of a meh hand, slow. Does have the Wasteland to disrupt him, but
as a Wasteland to disrupt him a little bit, does have an Abrupt Decay for a Stoneforge Mystic. Now, if you're Gerry, do you just go Wasteland your Underground Sea straight up? Yep.
That's the kind of play that I typically do not like in Legacy. But here, his hand is slow. He needs to get that equity back because you see him drawing another land.
Yeah.
He's not going to have time to go straight to 4 lands and play that Jace unless he can, you know, stall Shaheen somewhat on mana.
And it also makes the situation where if Shaheen does have a sack land, he's forced to use it to cast a Brainstorm as opposed to maybe cycling away some of the cards in his hand.
Well, here we see Shaheen correctly waiting to draw his card, hoping to draw that second land. Doesn't. We might see, you know, kind of another pretty uninteractive game here, which would be unfortunate. given how great the games we saw in the quarters and semifinals.
Yeah.
Now that these games have been really all that interesting.
No, hopefully Shaheen doesn't brick on lands here. He's going to cast a Brainstorm because he really doesn't want to miss one of his land drops. So Brainstorm, as long as he doesn't brick on 3 lands, hopefully one of them's a sack land, because if it's a sack land and 2 spells, he still probably needs to clear the way because he wants to keep drawing lands.
And here we see, so again, because Shaheen is already stalled on lands, he can't afford to get basics.
Yeah.
Because he needs his colors. He might only end up with 2 or 3 lands in play. These sort of starts are forcing him, and he does have a fetch land and a ponder, which is great.
Okay, so
that's what he wants.
Good 3 cards there for Shaheen. He's able to get rid of some of his clunkier cards in his hand.
Probably get rid of Stoneforge here, would be my guess. Maybe not.
Facing
Oh, he has
down
an Inquisition,
Abrupt
I think, so maybe he knows he can get rid of that Abrupt Decay. And he saves the Spell Pierce to interact with that Jace. Keeping a Swords to Plowshares. Not sure what those 2 cards
so
are.
Lingering Souls looks like one of the cards that's going away.
I would keep that Lingering Souls. I would be getting rid of that Swords to Plowshares, I think.
Yeah, Swords doesn't seem that effective right now, especially since you know what's in Gerry's hand. You really want to keep the Spell Pierce to keep Jace off the board. Looks like he's a Snapcaster as well.
Yeah, I would definitely be keeping this Lingering Souls. Although he doesn't have a 3rd land, that could be influencing it.
Yeah, we know he's got a Ponder to help search a little bit more, but
the card's just so important in this matchup, though, that I don't think you can afford to be shuffling it away here. I mean, you're keeping the Swords to Plowshares on the fear that Gerry draws a Tarmogoyf next turn, or in the next turn or 2, but I just don't think that's where you want to be. I would fetch here and just cast Ponder.
Well, the other thing for Shaheen, you don't have to be this aggressive. Like, you don't have to cast Inquisition this turn, do you?
You don't have to.
You could wait a little bit. You have a Ponder. You can cast Ponder next turn.
I would definitely be pondering there.
I don't know. I definitely like sacking and pondering, because you can search for the 3rd land, and then next turn you can go Inquisition Stoneforge if you want. But I'm not sure you necessarily need to just Inquisition here.
Yeah,
because
I would. I really
now,
like
if you don't draw a
there.
land, you're forced to ponder next turn.
Yep. I like the Ponder there. I would have pondered and kept the Lingering Souls with the plan of Ponder. Assuming you set something up, you then just cast Lingering Souls, you save that Inquisition to turn 4.
Yeah. So it looks like he took a Shardless Agent with the Inquisition, so Gerry still has an Abrupt Decay for the Stoneforge. Although...
So another Swords to Plowshares there.
Oh, so...
Oh, good. He'll get to shuffle it, though.
So shuffles it away. He does have a 2nd Stoneforge Mystic off that Ponder.
Yep.
So even though Gerry has an Abrupt Decay, the 2nd Stoneforge will come down next turn. Ooh, him to tourach. So...
I was just about to say I might actually have gotten Jit there to protect myself from something like a Thoughtseize, but I'm not sure which one's better. Certainly, I think it's better now that this hymn's happening, that he has the Battle Scroll in hand, because he might lose the...
So will he hit a Spell Pierce so that he can clear the way for Jace the Mindsculpt next turn? Very important him to tourach here. Only 4 cards left. Batter Skull, and there's the Spell Pierce. So Spell Pierce gone. We know that Shaheen doesn't have another piece of permission, so Gerry's threatening a Jace the Mindsculptor on turn 4.
So
or
actually,
turn 5,
ironically, it looks like there was a miscommunication, and Gerry actually thinks he hit the card on the other end.
Oh, wow.
He thinks he hit that top card. That's why he's being so explicit with which cards mean what. So Shaheen actually should not have actually lost the Spell Pierce there. He should have lost the Swords to Plowshares, which is unfortunate for him.
So pretty much the perfect him to tourach for Gerry. Hits the Batter Skull, hits the Spell Pierce. Shaheen's left with just the Stoneforge.
Imagine we had a Lingering Souls in our hand. Shaheen brought in Misdirection. That actually is a great card to bring in, and I did not think of that. That makes a lot of sense. Didn't notice it in Shaheen's sideboard. I like that sideboard card a lot. We saw it as he shuffled his deck. But again, I think Shaheen may have made some tactical missteps here, just not prioritizing that Lingering Souls highly enough.
Yeah, it didn't seem like he valued Lingering Souls nearly as much as you kind of mentioned. It feels like it's very powerful in this game. Kind of makes Abrupt Decay irrelevant.
It also makes Jace way worse.
Yeah, good way to attack Jace.
And at that point,
he knew... It's not vulnerable to hand disruption.
He knew the Jace was there.
Yeah.
He knew the Jace was there, and he took this line where it's just, okay, I'm all in on you just not getting to resolve your Jace. And when you do, okay, I just lose.
Yep. So it looks like Jace is going to come down. Are we going to bounce Stoneforge or just take the hit?
Just brainstorm here.
Because you do have an Abrupt Decay to deal with the Jete and Stoneforge.
I think we're just going to brainstorm here.
Try to get a little value at it, and just in case Shaheen does have a
Jace of his
own.
Or
a little value out of it. Yes.
Oh, we're bouncing. Okay.
He's going to bounce. He knows that the Batter Skull's already dealt with, so it doesn't matter if he's going to search again.
And there we go. That is a good top deck.
There's that Lingering Souls you mentioned. Good way to attack Jace. Looks like Gerry has another Jace, though, and just draws a now spellbound to deal with the second side of Lingering Souls.
That was a good draw.
So are we going to see a flashback here? He's got an Abrupt Decay to deal with the Jete. He can Fate Seal to sort of pump up the Jace a little bit and see what Shaheen's going to draw next turn.
He can even Fate Seal himself here.
I don't know, without a sack land, I think Fate Sealing Shaheen is probably a reasonable play here.
I don't disagree with you.
Draw a card first. That was Deathrite
That's
Shaman.
another good draw.
Deathrite Shaman, another way to deal with Lingering Souls. Probably wants to keep man up for Abrupt Decay.
And the reason why I suggested Fate Sealing himself here, just because there's no draw he's really afraid of from Shaheen at this point. He has a backup Jace in his hand. He's not going to put a Jace on the bottom.
So bounces a token. Jace is at 1, but again, we know he has that Abrupt Decay in his hand.
And he's going to go ahead and Abrupt Decay the Spirit.
Here comes a Stoneforge Mystic. Nothing left to search out of Shaheen's deck. Maybe he just wants to shuffle randomly, but nope. And a Brainstorm from Gerry gives him a little. He can brainstorm twice this turn if he chooses to, or Fate Seal.
Now, Jerry's line there with that bounce means that Umezawa's Jete is going to stay in play.
Yeah, and it's very difficult now because Gerry has that Deathrite Shaman in his hand, but it's just going to die to the Jete.
I think Jerry's trying to set up the bounce Stoneforge, replay a second Jace, brainstorm with a second Jace play, which he used last round against BBD.
Well, he drew a second Deathrite Shaman now, so he could just try to play both Deathrite Shamans out there, try to block and kill the Stoneforge Mystic when it attacks with an equipped sword. What he doesn't know, though, is that Shaheen does have a Swords to Plowshare. So.
That'll go very badly for Gerry.
So maybe Gerry just wants to Fate Seal here to pump it up. It won't die to the Stoneforge Mystic, and then he can bounce it next turn. Yeah.
Go ahead, leaves the card on top, plays both his Deathrite Shamans.
Yeah, so I like this play from Gerry. Empties his hand, but
it's gonna go.
And then there's a Perish. So pretty good card there. Just deals with 2 Deathrite Shamans, but again, Jace is the real issue here.
And now Jace is able to just minus and bounce with that Stoneforge Mystic, and Shaheen, without Lingering Souls, is gonna have a hard time getting that threat that stays in play.
Yep. And it's gonna be basically the same thing. We're saying Jerry's gonna be Fate Sealing, bouncing, Fate Sealing, bouncing.
Well, he won't get to do that much of the bouncing because the pump on the Jete. So he needs to find an answer.
Yeah, he needs to find an answer, but he has some time. He can. Oh, so he has another Brainstorm.
And Tarmogoyf is a good answer.
And there's the other Jace that he hit from before.
Yep.
Tarmogoyf, I don't know if it's big enough to block and kill a Stoneforge after the pump. So Stoneforge would be a 4/5. Oh, and Shaheen still has a Swords to Plowshares in his hand anyway.
Yep. And it is big enough.
So does Gerry want to Brainstorm here, or does he think his block will be okay? It's kind of a risky.
I think he's going to go ahead and bounce.
It's a little risky to try to think that your Tarmogoyf will be able to block. I don't think you ever want.
If he bounces here, he can bounce again next turn, killing the Jace and just play the second copy.
Yeah.
And then the board into an empty board, and then plus it, go up to 5, and just be very ahead on the kind of the Jace counters. Yeah.
So that's what he's doing.
And that's a line that Gerry likes a lot. I've seen him use it several times, pretty aggressively, and it's a good effect.
Yeah. It also allowed Gerry to start attacking with that Tarmogoyf.
Yep.
So yeah, recast the Stoneforge Mystic and equip it with Umezawa Jete. Let's see if Gerry does untap, bounce it again, killing his Jace and recasting the one that's on top of his deck.
Or offer anything in return.
So Gerry draws his card for the turn, and that's exactly what he does. Bounces, recasts Jace. We're going to get a Fate Seal or Brainstorm here.
With no cards in hand, I could see a Brainstorm.
Probably a Brainstorm, yeah.
Especially if he shuffles. He knows the top card's dead.
Yes. You have 50 minutes.
I still might have saved the shuffle just for the next. Seeing 2 fresh cards is still pretty good, but this seems fine.
Yeah, because he might want to just bounce next turn. So this is going to be the one turn where he's going to be brainstorming. So maybe he just wants to go a little deeper.
Yep.
So we're going to get a Brainstorm from Gerry Thompson likely, and then attack with Tarmogoyf. Shaheen has a Swords to Plowshares to deal with Tarmogoyf, and they'll probably recast the Stoneforge next turn. But he still needs to find an answer to that Jace.
I suspect in response to activating the Brainstorm, he's going to, they'll give him a chance to draw a counter spell.
Yep. So
Jerry up to 24 life now, but his life doesn't really matter.
Brainstorm resolves. Thoughtseize, Brainstorm, and a land. So Thoughtseize will be able to get rid of Stoneforge Mystic.
Yep, once and for all.
And Shaheen's left with no cards in his hand. So he's playing off the top of the deck here.
You know what we want to draw? Lingering Souls.
Lingering Souls would be a good draw here, yes. Because Fate Seal is going to be very difficult for Shaheen to kind of break out of. He does have one Marsh Flats, which will give him another free draw if Jerry does keep the card on top of his library. But is this going to be the point where Jerry just starts to Fate Seal, or is he going to try to dig a little more? Brainstorm here, him to tourach. So what do you think here? You think maybe him to tourach, him you get the last card out of your hand, then you start Fate Sealing again?
I don't think he'll bother with the him. I think he'll just start plussing. I think he'll take the either the Brainstorm or the fetch land.
So he takes the Brainstorm.
I think he'll start Fate Sealing Shaheen.
So Brainstorm resolves, keeps it, and he Fate Seals himself.
Yep.
Okay. Looks like 2 lands in Shaheen's hand. So, yep, Jerry kept the him, so now he can him 2 cards out of Shaheen's hand if he chooses.
Which now he'll definitely cast it.
Yeah.
When he sees Shaheen discard those 2 lands, now I expect him to Fate Seal again. He's going to try to win this game with this Jace.
Yeah, and this
Not
time he
going to
can
waste any time.
This time he can Fate Seal Shaheen pretty easily.
He gets to put a Goyf into play.
Yeah.
And
So,
he's actually probably going to Fate Seal himself again and put that land on the bottom. I think it's an interesting play. I would probably, I guess, because Shaheen has that Marsh Flats, he doesn't want to waste the turn working his way through it with the Fate Seal.
okay, so he's gonna keep smoothing out his draws, put a Tarmogoyf. Now he has a Tarmogoyf and a Jace that Shaheen has to deal with.
Yep.
2 very different threats that there's not really a planar cleansing in Shaheen's deck that he has to deal with.
I mean, Shaheen does have some live draws here again. You know, he could draw something. Well, okay, well that deals with that one. He has his own Jaces, and he has his Vindicate still left to take out that Jace.
So it looks like we're just gonna get a Brainstorm.
Yeah, which also makes sense again because now he says, okay, I've hit a clump of dead cards. I need to refuel a little bit. I expect him to actually keep both these Ancestral Visions and just suspend them both.
Yeah, I like this play a lot. Shaheen's so far behind. Even if he just grinds away out to deal with that Jace, Jerry's eventually just going to draw 6 cards.
And once he does this, I think he can go back to Fate Sealing.
Yeah.
Even if Jace dies, he knows he has 6 cards on layaway coming in, so he doesn't need to worry about his current card situation.
Yeah, he's basically just investing for the future here.
Yeah. And now he'll try to win the game with the Jace on its own, and if it doesn't, he has that fallback plan.
He also has an Abrupt Decay to now deal with that
Fate Seal himself, put the card on the bottom. Yeah, so Jerry, really using all the abilities of this Jace to great effect here. And I think he's just really demonstrating a good understanding of how to switch his roles in this game.
Now Spellbomb for Jerry.
We may finally see now. We'll finally see a Fate Seal on Shaheen.
So activation, draw a card. Another Jace.
Now we'll certainly see a Fate Seal on Shaheen.
So at this point, you think Jerry's going to start Fate Sealing Shaheen?
Yeah.
Just has so much gas, so really doesn't need to set up his draws anymore.
At all. When you're trying to draw 6, you don't really care what they are.
Force him to use that Marsh Flats. So Shaheen's going to get a free draw here before Fate Seal sort of locks him up.
So it's sort of funny. When Shaheen was playing in his last round, I predicted what he would do with Jace, based wrong almost every single turn. And I think I've been spot on. I think I've predicted every one of Jerry's activations. So maybe my play style may be more in line with Mr. Gerry Thompson than Shaheen Soorani, it looks like, despite my affinity for Shaheen's deck choice.
You should probably be probably teaming with Jerry, not Shaheen. Wow, so that one free draw was quite fruitful.
Whatever. Jerry's going to cast another Jace. He's going to draw 6 cards the following turn. This is not going to set him back at all.
And a creeping tar pit too, so pretty good draw here for Jerry. He's got multiple paths to victory. Shaheen just laughing, he knows this is going to be a rough situation for him over the next few turns.
The gig is up here.
Jerry deciding what he wants to do here.
I mean, he's going to plus the Jace. It's just, he's about to draw 6 cards. Who cares about filtering, slightly selecting which cards you have available?
I think you really just want to keep Fate Sealing Shaheen, force him to keep sacking those lands. So he keeps it, plays Creeping Tar Pit, passes back. Shaheen likely to sack again, sort of reset his deck so he can draw a fresh card that Gerry hasn't seen. Hopefully, another Jace. Maybe a Lingering Souls is probably ideal here.
It might even be a little bit too late now with those 6 cards Jerry's about to draw.
Yeah.
The window has kind of closed for that play. I was kind of hoping that Shaheen would flip the top card over and have it be a Jace that Gerry left on top, just to rub it in a little bit. Shaheen was joking about that during his quarterfinal match with Hetrick. He was going to run the gamble of leave the good card on top to make them use their fetch land.
Yeah.
No real reason to take this gamble when you're so far ahead as Gerry. Okay, well, there goes that Abrupt Decay. Tapped out, so we cannot kill the Jit, but the Jit not very relevant.
No.
Unless a Lingering Souls shows up. And with Gerry about to draw 6 cards.
And
extra,
the card for his turn.
Extra?
Yeah. He's going to get a full grip here. So, Shaheen just extends the hand. He's
not
too
coming
far
back from
behind. Gerry Thompson defeats Shaheen Soorani 3-0, becoming your Star City Games Invitational Champion yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. In decisive fashion, I mean, these games were not the most competitive. You know, we saw Shaheen bowling to 5 in game 1 and getting stalled on lands both in games 2 and 3. Made this game at least had it took a little longer. You know, Gerry had to do a little work for it, but he was pretty soundly in control the entire time. And yeah, but I think it's really great to highlight kind of 2 of the slower, more controlling decks in the format. They have a lot of play to them, a lot of decisions to be made.
Yeah, and you felt that maybe Gerry had a slight advantage in this matchup, but it seemed a lot more lopsided than that, partly because Shaheen's draws were a little weak. He was stalling a little, but he had the mulligan to 5. But again, Gerry did feel kind of like he was a slight advantage against Esper Blade in general,